This is the moment I said, okay, I want the life of an explorer because life is something we have to explore. Not only the moon or the sky or under the water, but also new ways to think, new ways to act and to have a better quality of life.
Hallo und herzlich willkommen zu einer neuen Folge von Handelsblatt Disrupt, dem Podcast über neue Ideen, Disruption und die Zukunft der digitalen Welt. Mein Name ist Ina Karabas und ich vertrete heute unseren Chefredakteur Sebastian Matthes. Und ich begrüße Sie sehr herzlich hier aus unserem Studio in Düsseldorf. Der Lebenslauf von Bertrand Piccard mutet ein bisschen an wie etwas von Jules Verne. Nicht in 80 Tagen, aber als erstes Team nonstop mit einem Heißluftballon um die Welt. Dann mit dem ersten und selbst entwickelten Solarflugzeug um die Welt. Dazu eine Stiftung, die sich allein der Erforschung und Verbreitung von energiesparenden Technologien und Ideen widmet. Der Abenteurer Bertrand Piccard stammt aus einer Familie von Forschern, für die es schon früh um Nachhaltigkeit und den Erhalt der Umwelt ging. Gleichzeitig interessiert den Psychiater Bertrand Piccard die Seele der Menschen und was es braucht, Unmögliches möglich machen zu wollen. Ja, und darüber spricht und schreibt er auch als Autor und engagierter Redner weltweit. Wie seine Forscherbiografie mit seiner Stiftung zusammenpasst, wie man profitable Lösungen für die Energiewende findet, wie man Staatschefs und Entscheider von der Machbarkeit überzeugt und wie man Mut an unerwarteten Orten findet, das hat Sebastian Matthes mit Bertrand Piccard besprochen. Denn nicht zuletzt wegen des Ukraine-Krieges, das merken wir ja jeden Tag, wird all das dringend gebraucht. Und damit zu Sebastian Matthes und Bertrand Piccard. Der Abenteurer und Stiftungsgründer kommt aus der Schweiz und deswegen sprechen die beiden Englisch.
Hello Bertrand, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for inviting me.
So the war in Ukraine is forcing the whole world in completely rethink its attitude towards sustainable energy solutions, which your foundation has been developing and collecting for a while now. But before we get into that, let's discuss about your family. It's a family of scientists and explorers. Your grandfather, Auguste, was a physicist and invented a pressurized cabin that made flight into the stratosphere possible. What was it like to be a child in this kind of family?
It seemed to be normal for me because I had all the stories about my grandfather going to the stratosphere, inventing the bathyscaphe. I had my father in front of me diving to the Mariana Trench, 11 kilometers down, building other submarines. A lot of astronauts, environmentalists, pioneers like Charles Lindbergh, whom I had the chance to meet. And that was my world as a child. And I thought it was normal to explore, to be a pioneer, to invent, to be disruptive. And when I grew up and I became a teenager, I was very disappointed to see that not everybody was like that. Not everybody liked to explore. A lot of people want to keep the status quo. They want to resist. They don't want to change anything in their way of thinking. And I was disappointed. But this is the moment I said, okay, I want the life of an explorer because life is something we have to explore. Not only the moon or the sky or under the water, but also new ways to think, new ways to act, and to have a better quality of life.
Mm-hmm. Was there this one moment when you thought, okay, apparently I seem to be somehow different?
Yes. Because I spent a part of my childhood in America. This is when I witnessed liftoff of 6 Apollo missions. And then I came back to Europe. I went back to a normal school. And I saw that nobody was really keen to be an adventurer. And when I was 16 years old, I started to fly with hang gliders. At 16, it's very young for that. I was the only one in my school. Nobody else dared to fly a hang glider in my school. And when my mother was picking me up at school with a hang glider on the roof of the car to bring me to jump from a mountain at the sunset before doing my homeworks, everybody thought it was completely crazy, you know? And I would think that everybody was going to also try new things, and not at all. Everybody was very conventional around me.
Okay, so did your friends admire you, or have you been this weirdo doing just different things than everybody else in school?
No, they admired me, but they said it's normal because you're the son and the grandson of big explorers. So it's normal that you do that, but it's not for us.
Mm-hmm. So how was your relationship with Auguste Piccard, your grandfather, who was also a friend of Albert Einstein and Marie Curie?
I was 4 years old when my grandfather died, which means that I remember him as a very warm old man, so nice with me, so loving for his grandson. But I don't remember any discussions. I don't remember what he could explain me. And it's a pity because when I started to work on long distance ballooning, to fly around the world with a Breitling orbiter, when I created the Solar Impulse project, I was thinking, he must have so many advice to give me because he was such a genius. He was finding all the solutions he needed. And I was thinking, that's too bad. He's not alive anymore.
He had a twin brother, a chemist by the name of Jean, who had emigrated to the US, if I'm right informed. The story goes that Captain Jean-Luc Picard, the captain of Starship Enterprise, is named after him. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And, with the American fear of being sued all the time, they changed a little bit the name. They went from Jean-Félix Piccard, who was the twin brother of my grandfather, to Jean-Luc Picard, and they took off one C. So Piccard from the Star Trek has P-I-C-A-R-D, and we have two C. And I was told it was really because they were afraid that we would sue them. Of course, we would never have sued them because it's such a fantastic symbol to have a member of our family going in the Star Trek Enterprise. And so it was an honor for us.
Okay. And your father, Jacques, he helped your grandfather develop the first deep-sea submarine, the bathyscaphe you just mentioned. Tell us about him. What, for example, was your first memory of your father?
My father... Well, I have memories of him building submarines since the beginning of my life,
because the ocean was his mission, right?
Yeah, exactly. He made the dive in the Mariana Trench when I was 2 years old. So, of course, I was born with these memories. And but what was really interesting is that my grandfather was in a dead end with his bathyscaphe because the first experience was not a big success. And then the French Navy took his ID away from him. And he thought, okay, I will never fulfill my dream of having a deep-sea submersible. And my father found all the people to help my grandfather to fund the bathyscaphe. And they built this bathyscaphe together in southern Italy, in Trieste. No, sorry. The people funding the project were from Trieste. Mm-hmm. This is why the submarine was called Trieste. But they built it in southern Italy, close to Naples, in Castellammare di Stabia. And they worked together for 2 years, built the submarine, and made the first dives together. They broke the first records of diving, going, when you go beyond 3,000 meters, where the official submarines of the US Navy could go only 300 meters, it's really impactful. So finally, the US Navy said to my father, we want to buy your bathyscaphe and bring it in the US and continue to dive together. So this is why the Trieste went to America, and my father made the deep dive in the Mariana Trench with a US Navy Marine officer.
So your grandfather has been an explorer, your father has been an explorer. What did you learn from your father? What were maybe the most important 2 or 3 things you took away for your life? How you take decisions today, how you start to explore things?
I learned mainly 3 things. I learned to be curious, because without curiosity, you cannot try anything. You need to be curious to start a project, to start to explore. And then the second thing was perseverance. Because without perseverance, you never succeed in the new things you try. And the third thing is respect, because without respect, your success have no value. And I think with these three values of curiosity, perseverance, and respect, I could really go very far in my life because it allowed me to succeed, but each time it allowed me to have a useful success, to do something useful with it. Like after the Breitling orbiter flight around the world in a balloon to launch the Solar Impulse project, that was even much more difficult. And after the Solar Impulse project, flying around the world on solar energy in an airplane, I launched the Solar Impulse Foundation to find solutions to protect the environment. So each time it was something new, something more, but always with the goal of being useful to others and to humankind.
And you must have learned a lot about failure as well, because when you explore, you fail a lot, right? So what did you learn about that?
I learned that the biggest handicap to succeed is the fear of failing. You should never be afraid of failing, because failing is not the worst. The worst thing is when you don't try. So, of course, I had very big failures. When I announced that I was going to fly for 3 weeks with a Breitling orbiter balloon for the first attempt and go around the world and be the first one to do it, and 6 hours later, that's really short, 6 hours later, I was down in the Mediterranean Sea, losing my balloon who was sinking because we had a technical problem on board. It's a big failure. My eldest daughter told me, "Daddy, I'm not going to school tomorrow. All my friends are going to laugh at me." And I told her, it's normal to laugh. It's normal. I failed miserably. It's a stupid failure, but I will try again. So tell your friends, you can laugh, but my father will try again.
Did you?
So she said, okay, if it's normal to laugh, if it's normal to fail, okay, I go to school, and it went very well. There was no problem.
Did you never think to give up?
Finally, you know what happens is that the people who laugh at you when you fail are people who don't dare to try anything. So it signs their own weakness. People who make fun of others are just weak people. It's not strong people. And when you understand that, you are not touched anymore so much by people who laugh at you.
So, but did you never think about giving up in all these situations you have been in?
No, because what I learned is that if you fail, it means that you have to try in a different way. So I tried in a different way. Of course, you should not be stubborn and try again exactly the same way, with the same strategy, with the same technologies. This would be a big mistake. So I changed technical things. I tried the second time. It went better. I changed the part of the crew. I changed the type of fuel that we had to heat the balloon. I changed the strategy. And finally, I succeeded. And it was very interesting to see that I was competing against big billionaires like Richard Branson, Steve Fossett, Remax team, and people like that. And they had much more money, bigger teams, bigger balloons. But at the end, when they failed, they tried over and over again, reproducing the same mistakes, which means that I succeeded when they failed at the end. And that was a big, big learning for me. Never fail twice for the same reason.
How old were you when the balloon came down?
Yeah, when I had my failure in the Mediterranean Sea, I was 38 and 39. And then I tried again when I was 40, and then I tried again when I was 41 and succeeded at 41 years old.
So what was the whole trip about?
It was the Jules Verne dream, of going around the world in a balloon. And never anyone had managed to do it. And it became the last graal of adventure in the 20th century. So there were about 10 teams who wanted to do this flight around the world non-stop in a balloon. And some tried and failed before I even started. And I thought in the beginning, maybe they will succeed before I'm ready. But if I don't try to be ready on time, I will never be the one doing it. So in the beginning, my competitors were failing and failing again. I was preparing my team, preparing my balloon. Then I started to fail also. But at the end, I succeeded. And It was, can you imagine? It was 45,000 kilometers, 20 days in the air nonstop, and we were pushed by the wind. So we had propane burners to heat the envelope and stay airborne, but everything had to be with the wind, with the forces of nature. So there was a team of weathermen, a team of air traffic controllers who were advising me for which altitude I had to fly to have the winds going in the direction I wanted. So it was really an incredible journey together with nature, getting the good direction of the wind, but using the technology to stay airborne as long as we could. And the challenge was high because the balloon that flew the longest before my flight around the world had flown 6 days. And we knew we had to fly 20 days. So it was very challenging. And what was so interesting is that so many people told me it was impossible. And also the big specialists in ballooning, they said, you cannot do that. You cannot fly for so long. But when you have an impossible or so-called impossible project, the people who come to help you and support you are very disruptive people, very creative and innovative people. They are the ones who like to solve problems to get to solutions. And this is exactly what happened. At the end, we succeeded.
But what is the driver behind such a mission? Just to achieve something nobody before has achieved? Or what is it really?
It is so interesting to do something that nobody has done before. Because you start from scratch. You have no benchmark. You have nobody who can tell you how to do. You have to try by yourself and with your team. So you are obliged to be innovative. You're obliged to be disruptive and creative. And this is so challenging. You know, you learn so much about yourself, about others, about life, about technology. And at the end, you know, it's so much more interesting to do things that are considered to be impossible rather than to do the same thing 1,000 times.
But is it just interesting? That sounds so weak. What is the driver really? What do you take out of such a mission in the end?
I always wanted to have an exciting and useful life. Because if it's only exciting, sometimes it's selfish. When it's only boring, very often, when it's only useful, very often it's boring. So I wanted to have both, exciting and useful. And this has been the guideline of everything I did in my life. Mm-hmm. And you cannot imagine how many people thanked me after the balloon flight around the world because it showed that you can fulfill your dreams, that you can go over failure, you can overcome failure in order to succeed. And you set a very, very difficult goal and you reach it. And it was very, very encouraging for a lot of people. This flight with the Breitling Orbiter 3 had a huge success, a big echo everywhere in the world. There were stamps being made. I was invited everywhere to give speeches, to have decorations. And it's very gratifying at the end to see that so many people enjoy the fact that you succeeded and that it was useful for them.
Mm-hmm. But before you did all these adventures, some of them we've talked already about today, you went to university and became a psychiatrist. How did that happen?
Because can you imagine that although everybody knows my father and my grandfather, I also had a mother. and with my mother, we spoke a lot about psychology, spirituality, philosophy. And I wanted to combine the exploration spirit that I inherited from my grandfather and my father to explore the human being, to explore the behaviors of people. What make people successful and fulfilled or depressed? What makes people daring or be afraid? And I really wanted to make my profession out of helping people to overcome their fear, helping people to overcome their own limitations in order to fulfill themselves a little bit more in life. So I was a medical doctor, psychotherapist, psychiatrist, hypnotherapist for 20 years, treating hundreds of patients. And at the same time, I had my life as an explorer of the outer world with my balloon flights and hang gliding and microlight expeditions and things like that.
A couple of months, we had a conversation in this podcast also with Yuval Noah Harari, and he told us that he's meditating every day for 2 hours. Do you meditate as well?
I meditate, not so regularly. It's not every day, and it's not 2 hours a day. But I meditate. I do also a lot of self-hypnosis, and especially if I have to write a book, if I have to write an article, if I need to give a special speech, I do some meditation really to connect more deeply with myself.
Mm-hmm. And self-hypnosis, why do you do that, and what does it help you with?
Self-hypnosis is a way to return the focus from the outside to the inside. Normally, you're always outside of yourself. Every stimulus is outside. You hear from outside, you see things that are outside, you smell, you touch things that are outside. But with self-hypnosis, you turn this focus from the outside to the inside. And you are attentive and careful to what happens inside of you. Mm-hmm. And you can deal with your emotions, you can deal with your creativity, with your imagination, you can stimulate also your imagination. And this is very useful. You know, in a way, meditation is about calming down the mind, and self-hypnosis is about using the mind to be more creative and to stimulating the mind to work more and better.
So is that something you recommend everybody to do?
Yeah, I think self-hypnosis is something that should be taught in every school, even to young children. It is so much better. You know, I was doing self-hypnosis when I was a child at school in order to have a better memory, to focus more when I was preparing an exam. And I was always the first.
Already in school. So how did you do that?
I listened to some special music that put me in this state of self-hypnosis. And to be very precise, it was, maybe for other people it will be another type of music, but for me it was the 2 first records of Leonard Cohen. It was Songs from a Room and Songs of Leonard Cohen. And there is a rhythm that repeats itself, and the words are very soft, you know, a little bit slow. You have a rhythm also of the words. And when I was listening this music, after 5 minutes, I was in a hypnotic trance, and I could read all my books, I could do all my homeworks, and by reading it once or twice, I knew it almost by heart. And all my friends at school, they had to read it 5 or 6 times in order to remember half of it, and they thought that I was more clever than they were, and I was not more clever at all. I just had this chance to have noticed that this type of music made me focus so much on what I was doing that I became really very performant. And it's only, I would say, 15 years later that I wanted to study hypnosis as a profession. And I noticed that what I was doing with my music and my homeworks, that was already self-hypnosis. It was very interesting. I was doing it just by intuition and not because I learned it, but it worked so well.
There are a lot of therapies being done with hypnosis. Even big surgeries are done while patients are in hypnosis, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Hypnosis really manages to use and develop the potential and the resources that we have inside of ourselves.
So let's talk about your next adventure. Since your father was the man of the ocean, you are somehow attracted by the air. You have crossed the Alps in an ultralight plane when you were pretty young. What age was that?
That was in 85. So I was 27.
And then many years later, after your balloon trip, you developed this solar plane. And eventually you were flying around the world. How did this idea happen, and what was the mission behind that? Or was it only another time you wanted to do something nobody else achieved?
No, the flight with the balloon around the world, that was a bit of a personal dream. But Solar Impulse was really the will and the purpose of demonstrating that you can achieve impossible goals with renewable energies and clean technologies. And I thought this is really the contribution that the world of exploration has to bring to the world of ecology and sustainability. Can you imagine? You built an airplane that can fly only on solar energy day and night, and you several days and several nights in a row. And all the specialists in the world of aviation told me it was impossible because they said the sun is not giving enough energy to keep an airplane day and night in the air. And this is the paradigm of today. It means we always need to produce more energy. And if you cannot produce more energy, then it's impossible and you cannot do it. I wanted to demonstrate the opposite. The goal is not to have more energy. The goal is to save energy and to do with little amount of energy. So we built an airplane that could cope with the energy the sun was giving. And this is why this airplane was so energy efficient. We had 72-meter wingspan. So that's bigger than a jumbo jet, but the weight was smaller than a family car. It was 2,300 kilos. And the power to fly was the power of a scooter. And we're flying, of course, very slowly. It was 45 kilometers per hour. So it's not yet something to transport 200 passengers across an ocean. But it's like the Wright brothers flyer, the first airplane in 1903. Same thing. You have one person on board. It flies slowly only in good weather. And 66 years after the Wright brothers, there were 2 men on the moon. So we see how things go fast in the world of aviation. And after opening the way with Solar Impulse, it's very interesting to see that now all the airplane constructors are working on electric airplane programs because they saw it was possible. And this is really the contribution of Solar Impulse.
What was the most difficult technological problem you had to solve? I mean, there's the weight of the plane. There are also the batteries for the electricity. What was the most difficult problem?
It was to have the airplane so light. Because proportionally to the size, the structure of Solar Impulse had to be 10 times lighter than the best competition glider, the best competition sailplane. So it's a huge step forward. And when we received some of the pieces for Solar Impulse, maybe a rib, of the wing was 150 grams, we said, it's too heavy. And they made another 100 grams, and we said, it's too heavy. And at the end, it was 50 grams. But because we had 200 of them, the weight saving was enormous. And it was like this for absolutely everything. So we needed to work with a shipyard in order to produce pieces in carbon fiber that were light enough. Nobody else knew how to do it. So this is for me also a big lesson. The first solar airplane flying around the world was built in a shipyard, not by airplane constructors like Boeing or Airbus.
So why are they not building it?
Because they thought it was impossible. They told me, when an airplane is big, it must be heavy. And when an airplane is small, it must be light. But you want an airplane that is big and light. It doesn't work. It's outside of the curve. They showed the curve, and they said it's outside of the curve. We cannot do it. Can you imagine the lack of creativity? And when we went to the shipyard, who has built the ships, who won the America's Cup for Switzerland twice, the guy told us, I can make your airplane as light as you want because I know how to use carbon fiber. And we developed completely new technological means and processes to build that plane. This is what André Borschberg was responsible for. My partner in Solar Impulse, André, his mission was to have the plane built, and he led the technical team and made a fantastic job, never being happy enough, when you receive a new piece. Always be critical. You can do better. You can make that piece more efficient or lighter. And finally, we had the best electrical engines, the best batteries, the thinner solar cells, the lightest structures. And we worked, of course, with some partners who not only funded the project, but also gave us technologies and products and materials, in order to do it.
But also, even when it's built in a shipyard, it's an expensive project. So how does the business model behind that look like? Who paid for all of that? Maybe let's start with how much money did the whole mission cost?
Over 15 years, it costed 170 million.
Who paid for that?
So in a way, you can say it's a lot of money. On the other hand, you can say that it's only 3/4 of the money that was paid to transfer a football player from Barcelona to Paris.
Okay, you can do this calculation all the time and make everything cheap compared to that. But still, who paid for that?
We had partners like Solvay, Covestro, Schindler, the elevator company, ABB, the engineering company. We had Altran, an engineering company also. We had Swisscom. We had Google. We had Moet Hennessy, the champagne brand, but that was more for the team than for the airplane. But we had all these big companies. We had Swiss Re Corporate Solution, an insurance company. This is really something big. When you have an insurance company who becomes a sponsor in an experimental project, it means they really trust you, and that was great.
So this mission somehow worked out. Is there any new? We will talk about your foundation in a minute, but is there another mission in your head already, another dream, something you want to achieve nobody else tried yet?
I've been contacted by a group of people who want to build a solar airship, solar Zeppelin, that could transport several people around the world nonstop. And I think it's a nice project. And I'm now studying with them if it's feasible and if we can find the team and the sponsors, partners in order to do it. So maybe I will take off again. And what I like with this idea is that if you fly with an airship with several people on board or above all the countries of the world, you can really use it as a communication platform to speak about sustainability, about solar energy, about clean technologies. And the goal would be really to have communication by satellite phone with schools, with universities, with heads of states, governments, and promote all the solutions to protect the environment and everything we do today with the Solar Impulse Foundation.
And on all these missions, especially in the Solar Impulse airplane, what did you learn about yourself? Because I imagine you've been for days in this very small capsule. There's no toilet. You can't bring a lot of food. So how does that work? And what did you learn about yourself?
It was never something painful or difficult because it was the achievement of the dream to be for several days and several nights in the cockpit. So the seat could be put flat, so it was possible to sleep for 20 minutes with self-hypnosis. There were toilets on board, there was food. I could wash myself with wet wipes, like the little babies. And believe it or not, it was really enjoyable. It was fantastic. And I learned several things with this project. I learned really to be patient because it took twice the time that I thought. It was a 15-year project instead of a 5 or 6 year project, almost 3 times longer. It was a lot of problems. So I really needed to be perseverant, not only patient, but perseverant. Never give up on something. And the third thing, that was mainly in the air. When I was flying alone at night in this experimental airplane, I was feeling better than in my normal life. And that was quite strange because I saw that, of course, you need a bit of courage to fly that plane across oceans. But more than courage, you need to trust yourself. And when you are away from all the benchmark, out of your zone of comfort, you find everything you need inside of you. You find the focus, the concentration, the performance, the creativity, the good reactions, the inner calm also. You can be calm inside. And this way of being obliged to trust myself, to have confidence in the situation, that was something that was maybe the most beautiful experience of all.
It sounds so easy when you talk about it, but it's not really for everybody to just risk their lives and then eventually everybody can trust themselves, right? So it can't be so easy.
It's not because you risk your life that you trust yourself. It's because you learn how to trust yourself that you can start to take more risk.
Okay, and that's the point I'm leading to. So how can you learn that?
I think you learn that by taking every opportunity to go out of your zone of comfort. You start by things that are not necessarily life threatening. If you are in public, to dare to ask a question in public, to dare speak with other people that you don't know, to go in places you've never been, to do things progressively that you never learned to do. And you start to learn to do it, And always put yourself in situations and with people who are different and who oblige you to focus and to be more aware of yourself. This is important. Each time you are in the routine, inside your zone of comfort, you don't need to focus. You don't need to be aware of yourself. You don't need to use your inner resources. But each time you push yourself, you stimulate yourself to do something new, then you have to dig inside of you and get more of this awareness, of this performance. So I give you an example. When I was 16 years old, I wanted to be a big explorer, but honestly, I was afraid to climb in a tree. And I thought it's going to be hard to be an explorer if I'm afraid of heights. And I saw a hang glider flying in the sky when I was 16 during my holidays in the Swiss Alps. And that was one of the first guys flying hang gliders in Europe. It was in 1974. And I thought, I have to try that. Because if I try that, I will be able to cure my fear of heights. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's what I did. I started to train, I started to fly, and it completely changed my life. Because I learned how to do the things in a safe way in order to avoid to have accidents. Yeah, of course, I had a couple of accidents here and there, but I would say that it really was a school for me, a learning, an experience that was so useful in my life. When all my friends were coming to the exams, very anxious, very afraid, a lot of stress, we have an exam, we're afraid. I was going the day before to do some loopings with my hang glider, and when I arrived at the exam, I was completely calm and quiet. I had no fear at all, and I could be very successful. So really this stimulation of performance from the inside of ourselves is something that is important, I believe, to succeed in life. So some people will not do it with hang gliders, of course. Some people will do it with art, with dance, with singing, with meditation, whatever. And it's as good. But what we need to do is to get out of the routine. We need to learn to think differently. We need to be disruptive in our life in order to avoid to sleep in the habits. Because sleeping in our habits is the worst thing. We are not awake in life, and we need to wake up and to use all our skills and to use all our performance and to use all our awareness if we want to succeed in something.
And this is definitely something many parents, at least I can say for myself, want to teach their children. And you also have children. So how can you teach this to the younger ones? To trust themselves, to go out of their comfort zone? How do you make this a habit?
The first thing, you should not make your children afraid about everything. You have all the parents who say, don't do that, don't think that, do this, think like that. No, Of course, you need to protect your children in order to avoid an accident, but you need also to stimulate their responsibility and their curiosity. I took all my children flying in balloons, in helicopters, in gliders, in paragliders. They all jumped from airplanes with a parachute. And I did it in a safe way. There was an instructor with them, or sometimes I was the pilot for them in the balloon. But just showing them that if you do the things in the right way, you will learn from the experience to be more responsible, to manage the risk better. So I'm not a daredevil at all. I did not tell my children, you have to take all the risk and you will see everything will go well. I did exactly the opposite. I told them there are a lot of risks. We need to be careful. And if we are really careful, aware of what we're doing, if we're responsible of our actions, then we will avoid to have an accident and we will manage risk in a much safer way. The goal is to be safe, not to kill ourselves, of course.
And your children, are they adventurer now as well, explorer like you are?
Well, they have their own job, architect, economist, and lawyer. But they do a lot of activities in nature, in sport, kite surfing, mountaineering, and things like that. And in their job, they're very creative. You know, they understood that pioneering spirit can be used every day in life to be more successful. And they use it really very well. I'm proud of the way they steer their life.
You wrote a book called Change of Altitude, and you're creating an arc from flying to the big questions in life, such as the meaning of life, dealing with crisis and death. So what were you trying to tell readers in this book?
I was telling them that life is like a balloon flight. In a balloon, you are pushed by the wind, and you are prisoner of the direction of the wind. But you can change your altitude by dropping ballast in order to change altitude and find a wind that has a better direction. And in life, it's exactly the same. In life, you can throw away the ballast of the certitudes, the habits, the beliefs, the exclamation marks, the paradigms, the dogmas, and you can change altitude psychologically, professionally, philosophically, spiritually, of course, also, in order to catch other winds of life. That means other influences, other strategies, other answers, other solutions that will reorient your life in a better way. And this is this is the book I wrote at the same time as a psychiatrist and as an explorer, in order to help people to steer themselves in the problems and the crises of life in a more successful way.
So you were talking a lot about crisis and about situations, difficult situations. What was the most difficult or dangerous situation you have been in? Because when I'm listening to you talking, it all sounds so easy and easy to do. So what has been the biggest crisis, the most dangerous situation?
No, I could make an entire podcast explaining all the failures and all the problems I had. You know, in my childhood, my father had so many financial problems because he was putting all his money in his submarines that he mortgaged the house and borrowed money to feed the family. And with my brother and my sister, we were really afraid that we would not have any more money to live in our family. And this was also, you know, you can say, okay, it's horrible. Okay, this was a teaching for me to learn how to use the economy and the sponsoring and the partnerships better than my father did. And I could raise a lot of money when my father failed in doing that. But thanks to him, I also saw what I should not do. You know, I had a lot of failures. I launched a little startup when I was 22, 23 years old to transport tourists in microlight airplane over the most beautiful areas of the world. And I tried that in the Maldivian Islands, in Greece, in the Canarian Islands, and I failed. It was too early. People were not ready for that. I did not get the permissions. People were afraid to fly in microlight airplanes. And I had to stop because it was a complete failure. With Breitling Orbiter, I failed at the first attempt. With Solar Impulse, we broke a piece of the wing of the second airplane, and it was the big crisis in the team. When I was making an aerobatic demonstration with my hang glider, the hang glider broke, and I had to pull the safety parachute. I almost killed myself. I don't want to give the impression it's easy. I want to give the impression that it's interesting, and that each crisis teaches you another way to do. You know, in a crisis, the goal is not to complain because it was better before. The goal is to identify what are the skills and the tools that you have not yet learned and that you need to learn right now in order to be better at the end of the crisis than you were before. And if you manage to do that, the crisis becomes an opportunity to develop yourself, to have more performance, to have more experience, to have learned new things, or to do things differently. So it's a state of mind. You can always say, life wants to destroy me, and you are afraid and you're depressed. Or you can say, life wants to challenge me, and I need to answer to this challenge and to succeed. And that's another state of mind. But this is the state of mind that I want to communicate, because I think it's more positive.
And you are always looking for new challenges, and you have focused always for a long time on the environment. And now you have the foundation, the Solar Impulse Foundation. Tell us a little bit how this foundation came about.
Yes, you know, I noticed that for 50 years, the people promoting protection of the environment were saying that it was very expensive to protect the environment. It was sacrificial. You had to renounce to mobility, comfort, economic growth. And they had a very boring way to present ecology. And I thought, you need to drop the ballast, change altitude, and take another direction. And I was thinking, we should prove that protection of the environment is profitable, it creates jobs, it's exciting, it can federate a lot of people, and it can reconciliate also the ecology with the economy and with the industry by finding new business opportunities to protect the environment. So after the flight with Solar Impulse around the world, I launched the challenge of selecting in the world, first identify and then select and label more than 1,000 technical solutions that exist today that protect the environment and make economical sense. That means profitable for the people producing it and profitable for the people using them, using these solutions. And believe it or not, we have identified 1,400 of them today. 1,400 proves that the protection of the environment is more profitable than the destruction of the environment. And these solutions come from startups or from big companies. And they are not used or not used enough. And they can increase the efficiency. It means less resources, less energy being wasted to obtain a better result. Some are new sources of energy, of course, clean and renewable. Others make circular economy possible. Some are using the waste as a resource to do something else with it. Instead of throwing the waste in the oceans or in landfills, you can produce stones for construction. You can produce plastic with the waste. You can do so many things. So today, I can really tell you seriously that we can have a world that throws nothing away, a world that is efficient in terms of using the resources and the energy, and a world that produces everything it needs with renewable and clean sources of energy. And the next challenge is to bring all these solutions to big corporations, to heads of states, to governments, and to give them the toolkit that they need to reach their environmental goals of being carbon neutral in 2050. Because you need to be clear, all these governments, they say we're going to be carbon neutral in 2050, but they have absolutely no idea how to get there. They don't know how to do it. And what we want to do is to bring the the solutions to show them how they can do it. So that's a challenge. And of course, everybody tells me it's impossible. You cannot change the world. But we can change a lot of things in this world by speaking the language of the people we want to motivate. All these people want to create jobs. They want to get money for their company or whatever. Well, show them that they will create more jobs and make more money if they protect the environment correctly, because it's a new business opportunity.
Talk a little bit about how you identify these ideas, because there are many more than these 1,400 ideas. So how does the selection process work? And maybe how much money did you collect for this foundation to make these ideas big?
We have a budget of 4 million euros per year, and it is covered by 16 companies who partner with us. And we just go everywhere in the incubators, investment funds who are investing in startups. We go in the international clean tech network. We contact everybody we can, and we select these solutions. So they are not ideas. They need to be ready today to be used today. This is very important. Because if I go to a head of state and I say, I have a lot of ideas for the future, the president will tell me, please come back in the future. So I need to show what exists already today. And of course, there will be more than 1,400, but these 1,400 have been assessed by our group of experts. It's a process that is certified by Ernst & Young, and it's very, very powerful. The result is really powerful.
When we look into the world today, we have this war in Ukraine and the big discussion about energy supply everywhere in the world, especially in Europe. Do you think this crisis is somehow changing the world? Will there be a different approach to clean technology, for example?
I hope, because if it doesn't change the world, it will be another crisis that is useless. When you have a crisis, a war, so many people suffering, I hope we will learn something from it, and not just learn how to keep peace in Europe, but also how to use clean energy much more. And when we see that there is a problem now with Russian gas and oil, the first reaction should not be, where else can we find gas and oil? The first reaction should be, how can we be more efficient in order to use less oil and less gas? And there should be immediately some programs to change the heating systems in the houses, to have better insulated houses, to have electric mobility, to have new industrial processes, to have LED lamps, all what allows to consume less fossil energy. This should be the first reaction. Because, fossil energy can only have a price that goes up because it's a limited quantity. And renewable energy can only have a price that goes down because it's an unlimited quantity. So people have to be logical as much as ecological, and they have to include that into the political decisions.
What are the 3 most noteworthy solutions maybe your foundation found that we in Europe can use today already?
There is not just one solution that will save the world, but what will save the world is the fact that there are so many solutions. And I can give you a couple of examples. A startup in France who has invented a system to recover the heat from the chimney of the factories in order to store it and keep it for the factory. It's 20% reduction in the energy bill. It's a new startup that makes business, and it's a lot of energy that is saved. You have a process that transforms all the waste from the households into plastic that can be used, or into stones for construction. There are ways to make to put heat pumps with geothermy in the center of the cities, which was impossible until now. You have all these grid management systems you call the smart grid that allows to reduce energy at the level of a city by half. You have systems that manage to recover the water and make a closed loop with the sanitary water in the houses. You have seeds that you can plant for cereals and vegetables, that are embedded in a molecule that helps to use less water and less fertilizer. All these exist, but they're not used everywhere, and they should be used everywhere.
Just asking because I know that many young entrepreneurs are listening to this podcast as well. So if they have a solution, they can just apply at your website, or they can just write to you to be somehow surveyed from you guys?
Absolutely. They can go on solarimpulse.com, and there is the entire explanation how to apply. It needs to be at least a prototype at scale 1:1. So something that is really working today, already on the market or ready to go on the market, protecting the environment in a financially profitable way. And then they will fill up a submission form that will be assessed by our experts. And then if everything goes well, they receive the label, Solar Impulse Efficient Solution label. And we promote them, we put them in our portfolio, we put them in the selection of solutions that we bring for countries or for cities or for corporations. And we also advise two banks for an investment fund. It's BNP Paribas and Rothschild & Co. We're advisors for them to invest into the solutions that have been labeled by our foundation in order to help the startups to grow. So it's important for us really to help the implementation of all these new solutions.
And just to complete the picture, governments and companies who want to find easy solutions will find it as well on your website, right?
Absolutely. On the homepage, there is what we call the Solutions Explorer. So they put some keywords and they can search and get exactly the type of solutions that respond to their needs.
I was wondering in preparation of this podcast, after you've done so many adventures and somehow fulfilled quite a few dreams already, is there still a dream you have, something you really still want to do?
I really want all these solutions to be implemented. I want to change the political decisions that keep doing always of the same with old infrastructures, polluting systems and so on, and push to a modernization of all our systems and bring more efficiency in this world, to save resources, to save energy. This is really something I want to do in the rest of my life.
But this sounds more like an office job somehow. It's really different to what you did before. So isn't there this ultimate adventure you have in your head to make it happen eventually?
Well, it's not an office. It's not so much of an office job, because I go and meet heads of states, head of governments, ministers, CEOs of big corporations. It's really interesting. Now, of course, it's not an adventure in the air. So if I can fly around the world in a solar zeppelin, or if I can fly around the world in a hydrogen airplane, in something completely new, then of course I will do it.
That sounds interesting. Hydrogen airplane, maybe that's an idea.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm working on it. But it's a bit early to know exactly how to do it and if it can succeed or not right now. But it's not just to do an exciting flight. It will really be to promote the spirit of the clean technologies. So it needs to be coherent. There needs to be really a purpose in what I'm doing. I'm not just doing things because they're spectacular. This is not what I want to do.
I think everybody has understood this after our conversation. Bertrand, I say thank you so much. And we definitely have to do another podcast on failure at some point. But for now, thanks for all these thoughts, insights. And we will follow on all your adventures. Thank you so much.
With pleasure. And I'm welcoming the idea of a podcast on failures and what we learn from failures. That would be interesting also. So thank you very much for the invitation, and goodbye to you and to everyone listening.
Und damit sind wir auch schon wieder am Ende von Handelsblatt Disrupt. Wie immer freuen wir uns über Kommentare. Schreiben Sie uns gerne eine Mail oder wie gewohnt an die Disrupt LinkedIn-Gruppe. Die Details finden Sie in den Shownotes. Danke an dieser Stelle auch für die Unterstützung von Florian Högerle und Regina Körner und Migo Fecke von Professional Podcasts, dem Dienstleister für Strategieberatung und Podcast-Produktion. Wenn Sie gerne jederzeit Zugang auf alle Artikel des Handelsblatts haben möchten und natürlich auch alle Podcasts hören möchten, dann bekommen Sie hier von mir einen Hinweis auf unser Disrupt-Vorteilsangebot. Schauen Sie doch mal nach unter handelsblatt.com/mehrwirtschaft. Dazu gibt es auch die Details noch in den Shownotes. Wir hören uns in der nächsten Woche noch einmal, bevor Sebastian Matthes dann wieder für Sie da ist. Bis dahin wünsche ich Ihnen, ganz im Sinne von Disrupt, interessante, digitale und auch analoge Zeiten. Ihre Ina Karabas.